Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I am your host, Sadia, and this is my mother, Ima. Hey, Ima.
Hello, my little sweetness. You've been a good boy this week.
I try to.
Very good. I
Yeah.
got people watching you. I got spies.
Really?
They're watching. Yeah, they report back to me. Yeah, let me know if you're behaving yourself.
Oh.
Yes. So there's how's everything been going by you? My honey bun.
It's coming along. It's just, work and stuff, and that's all. Nothing crazy, nothing too nuts.
How's it feel getting back after the Hanukkah vacation? I mean, Hanukkah vacation. You didn't have a vacation, but the Hanukkah.
No, I had no vacation. It's just, you feel every time after a holiday, you always feel kind of down and out of it, and whatnot.
I think it's also the sugar. It's the sugar low. The holiday, holidays are full of, like, especially Hanukkah. The donuts and the cookies and you got the big sugar high, chocolate coins. And so it's like a big sugar high, and it's the after the Yontif, it's like
yeah, whatever. Everyone's kind of out of it.
Yeah. But anyway, this past week was interesting. I went. To our listening audience, I went up to New York for a chasana.
Mm-hmm.
And let's face it, people, New York chasanas, Baltimore chasanas are nice, okay?
New York's always over the top.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, this family, they're kind of, how can I say it? They're not wealthy people. And this was a wedding that it was obvious it wasn't over the top. It really wasn't. It was done very nicely and in good taste. It wasn't a very big wedding. It was a very nice. It was done, would you believe it, the Jewish Children's Museum in Crown Heights.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the hall there, it's a nice hall, nice surroundings. And what's so cute is because it's a children's museum and a Jewish children's museum, when you use the sinks or whatever, they have the Asher Yotzor Brocha printed right over the sink with these little pictures telling you how important it is to thank Hashem for everything, and the brachas over the waters, over the sink. It's really cute. But I tell you, the food was very amazing. It wasn't your usual. How can I say it? It wasn't your usual wedding food. First was buffet style, and there was a big variety. Mm-hmm. And then they had a shmorg, like a small shmorg afterwards of very unusual desserts. There was like these little, they looked like cakes. They were these little squares with a little wooden spoon that was stuck into them that had like a pretty little like chocolate thing on top of it. And I tell you, I don't know what it was. I really don't. It was delicious. I couldn't tell. It was definitely not a cake. It was not a pastry, but I couldn't tell if it was halva or if it was fudge. I couldn't tell if it was chocolate covered halva or fudge. I couldn't tell. But it's very sweet and delicious. And they had these parva ice creams and sorbets, and then they had these cakes with whipped cream and fruit topping.
Well, speaking of food, what was the first thing you ever learned to cook?
I learned how to boil water without totally burning up the pot, which I did occasionally. What I used to do was sometimes, I guess I was like 13, 14 years old. If I wanted, this was before the age of microwaves, when you actually had to boil up water if you wanted instant coffee or tea. So I would put on boiling water. I would put on water to boil, and then I would go do something else. And I figured, a few minutes, I'll come back, it'll be all boiled. Well, one time I overestimated how long I was out of the kitchen. And they always have these jokes about you're such a lousy cook, you could actually burn boiling water, could actually burn water. Guess what? I burned the water.
Oh, God. Oh, man.
There was no water in the pot. It was like, oh my God, you could see the pot itself. It was like you could smell the metal. It was like, this heated, cooked metal.
God. Um,
It took me a while to develop my culinary talents.
yeah, no, you've gotten better. I definitely.
Thank
I
you.
I was just talking to Ruthie about how I liked when I was younger. I used to make peas. The way you made it was tasted really good.
Oh, I would steam. See, I never liked overcooking vegetables.
Hmm.
Even as a kid, I never liked overcooked vegetables. I like the vegetables just blanched so that they're pretty. They've got that nice bright color and they're just tender enough, but just hard enough, so that they have a nice texture. And I would usually, while they were hot, I would put like margarine and seasonal
Ah, seasonal.
on
That's
them.
what it was.
Mhm. My mother used to make steamed vegetables with, she would put margarine and salt, not even pepper, just salt. But when I started to do my own cooking, I thought to myself, wait a minute, there's so many nice spices. Why just salt? Salt, pepper, paprika, garlic powder, onion powder, seasonal. You put some really nice spices in it. Of course, then she did her vegetables. I told you the story about her doing her vegetables in the pressure cooker.
No,
I never told you the story.
no.
Your aunts and I laugh every time we hear the word pressure cooker. My mother received a pressure cooker. She got married in 1947, and pressure cookers, I think, had just come out. And let's put it this way, they weren't totally perfected.
Oh no.
So very often we would be sitting in the living room around dinner time watching television, and we would hear my mother say a 4-letter word. Yeah, a 4-letter word. We would run to the kitchen in time to see the food, the pressure cooker, the vegetables, the pressure cooker shoot up to the ceiling like the great geyser.
Oh my goodness. So wait. So what about like what kind of meals did your parents used to make you when you were growing up that people seem to not make anymore?
Well, there was, I think, one of you kids, I don't know which one it was. I think it might have been you or Etty. One of you guys came across a, it was a cookbook of recipes from the 50s. And you were showing it to me, and I was laughing and laughing because I remembered some of them. I remembered um, the beans and franks, where my mother would make hot dogs and she would cut it up and she would mix it with, say, a can of baked beans. I never liked baked beans, and I still don't. I think they're too sugary, too sweet. I don't like the way they're made. And so I would just pick out the hot dogs. I would eat the pieces of hot dogs out from the baked beans. So I wouldn't eat the baked beans. What else did she make? She was actually, as a cook, well, when my parents, they didn't have they were financially, let's put it this way, we were not among the higher echelon. I guess you would call my parents lower middle class. And today, today they would have been eligible for WIC. They probably would have been eligible for a certain amount of food stamps, who knows? But in those days, in the 50s, the World War II Depression generation did not believe in looking for help. They just not believe in it. It was beneath their dignity. They felt ashamed, and they didn't even try. Like my sisters and I reminisce about summer camp. That we bet, like my parents didn't have money to send us to sleepaway camp. Sleepaway camp was expensive, and my sisters and I, looking back, said, you know what? Had our parents gone to JFS, they probably would have been eligible for, say, like Camp Louise. Camp Louise and Camp Airy were in those days, were under the auspices of JFS. And it was very easy to get help for those camps. But our parents were the type of people who they wouldn't do it. They probably would never, it never occurred to them. They never did it. As far as recipes go, let me see. My mother would take, my father, was in the fruit and vegetable business, and he also sold kosher killed chickens. And very often at the end of the day, he would bring home to my mother the fruits and vegetables that he couldn't sell, that are starting to go bad. She would take these fruits and vegetables, especially vegetables, like squash. And she would cut around it like a zucchini squash, peel them, cut around them, and puree them, and add matzo meal and eggs and spices, and make latkes
Oh
out of
wow.
them, like squash latkes, and they were good. She would make, as a matter of fact, one of the things that she'd make was mock crab cakes. Since we kept kosher,
Hmm.
she would take flounder. Flounder's the fish that smells like crab meat because it's white and flaky.
Hmm.
And she would mix it. She would take a crab recipe for imperial crab, flour, or she would use matzo meal, like matzo meal, mustard, Old Bay seasoning, diced onions. Diced onions, and she would make mock crab cakes out of flounder,
You guys used
and
to,
they were good.
when you guys used to grow your own food?
No, we were no. We were not farmers. No, we did not grow up our own
No.
food. No, but my parents had when we lived in Baltimore City, my
Yeah.
parents had a beautiful grapevine that they planted that went all around the fence. Well, it took up like a quarter of the fence in our backyard. This beautiful grapevine. And sometimes we'd go out there, we'd pick some of the grapes and eat them. Most of the time we would just, ignore them and just let the animals get them. But there was one season that my father decided he wanted to try to make wine.
Oh wow.
And he picked the grapes and he put them in these huge ceramic vats and aged them and then drained them. And the wine was delicious. It was, you could barely taste the alcohol. It's just a touch of alcohol, and it was sweet. It's really good wine.
Wait, so you guys wouldn't do any gardening?
I'm trying to think. No, not really. When I was a kid, no, we didn't. One thing I did do though once was I could smell on our lawn. We had scallions, wild growing scallions. In Baltimore and Maryland, they called them spring onions. When I went up to New York and I called them spring onions, people laughed at me and told me they're called scallions. But they grew wild in our yard. So one time I went around my yard, I think I was like 10 years old or something, and I dug out like a whole bunch of wild growing spring onions or scallions, whatever you want to call them. And I washed them off in the sink very, very well, and ate them raw.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Now then, there's one time my father, when my parents first moved into their house, there were it was a newly developed area. It was still Baltimore City, but it was like, it was a part of Baltimore City where there was a lot of forestry and it hadn't been developed yet. So there was wild growing raspberries in the woods. So
Oh,
my
really?
father, being a real, like today he would have been in vogue. He was a health fanatic before it became popular.
Interesting.
And he decided to go out into the woods and pick the wild raspberries. Well, my father fell into a patch of poison ivy,
Oh no.
and my father's had very sensitive skin anyway. To make a long story short, my mother said that for about a week he was doing nothing but bathing in a bathtub of calamine lotion.
Oh my gosh. And then he went back to going ahead looking for berries.
No, I think he gave up after that.
Yeah.
But I did before you were born, when Yehuda was a baby, I attempted to plant in our backyard. There was a man that came around with a tiller, and he charged just $10, and he would go around to everybody's lawns and backyards, and within minutes he would have the whole side of your backyard dug up and ready for planting.
Oh wow.
So I went to Home Depot and I got a bag of fertilizer, and my neighbors advised me to get lime. They advised me about that. So the soil on Glengall Avenue where we lived, and still actually where we still live, is very acidy. You look at it, it's like, yes, you look at it, it's brownish red.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sign. And the and told me it's very, very important for me to put a lot of lime on it because of that. So I got a big bag of lime. I got a big bag of fertilizer, and I spread it out there, and I dug and dug and dug, and dug it into the soil. And the two vegetables that grow very, very well in Maryland because of the soil being more of an acid type soil are tomatoes and corn. Those two things
Interesting.
grow very, very well. I tried peppers. The soil ate up the peppers. They didn't grow.
Really?
I tried, neighbors of mine told me, I tried cucumbers. Nope. The soil, for some reason, totally ate up the cucumber seeds. But neighbors of mine told me that they tried cabbage, and they said the problem with the cabbage in our area is that there's a certain type of lice that attack the cabbage, and the only way to keep the lice away is to spray it with so much insecticide that you probably can't even eat it in the end, because a couple of my neighbors tried that. It didn't work. So I planted corn and cherry tomatoes. And I remember Etty and Honey were little kids. And for those of you who are listening, those are Sadia's two older sisters. And I remember taking a hose, like hosing down the cherry tomatoes. And as they were ripening, a few of them were ripe and ready to be picked. I would actually pick them off the plant, hose them down, and Etty and Hani and me would actually eat the cherry tomatoes right from the plant as I was picking them. That was very good. Then the corn, oh my gosh, the corn grew amazingly. I steamed it. I put whatever was left in the freezer. We were eating corn, fresh corn, up until almost December.
Oh, wow.
That I had picked and frozen and steamed, picked it, steamed it, and froze it. Then I tried it a couple years later. And for some reason, I was not successful. I think I didn't use fertilizer. I think I should have used lime. That's why I didn't do it. I just decided to put in these tomato plants, these corn plants, and this time it didn't work. Then there was one year where I put corn plants in, and they were actually starting to be successful. And it was the week of Tisha B'Av. I was in the kitchen. I turned my back. I'm doing some things in the kitchen. I look out the window. My entire garden of corn is like torn to shreds. I mean, like someone had come through with some sort of rake or knife and just devastated the plants. And Etty and Hani were out in the back playing, and I thought it was them and their friends. So I came out and I said, "What did you kids do to my corn plants?" And they said, "Ema, we didn't do anything to your corn plants. Look." And there was a big, fat, fluffy squirrel sitting in the middle of my corn plants, just munching away.
Oh my goodness.
After that, I gave up, decided not to plant anything else.
Oh, I mean, I don't know if I mentioned it on the, I think I mentioned on the podcast before about when you made those cookies. And then I remember going on a scooter and like scooting up and down the block and hearing a very loud bang, 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 bang. And I look up and I see a squirrel trying to crack your cookies and thinking
it was muffins.
The muffins. So muffin.
The muffins didn't quite work out. So
Yeah.
I threw them out. I threw them outside, figuring the birds would eat them or something. I didn't realize, and a squirrel got a hold of one of them. It was on the top of our house. It was trying to bite into it. It was banging on the thing. It was banging the thing on the roof of our house. That's how hard it was.
That's hilarious.
Yes. Then there was the very first time I tried to make challah, very first time.
Mhm.
I decided I wanted to make whole wheat challah. This was when your father and I were living in Crown Heights, when we were first married. So I didn't know you're supposed to mix whole wheat flour with white flour.
Mm.
Otherwise, it can be very, let's put it this way, very hard on the digestion. Let's put it this way, I give you intestinal problems. I didn't know that. So I made it with whole wheat. And I didn't realize also with whole wheat, it's important to make sure it's thoroughly baked. Now, this challah that I made, not only was it totally whole wheat, but it was just a little underbaked. at least for whole wheat flour, it was not baked as much as it should have been. Well, it tasted good. Everybody liked it. My guests liked it. I liked, everybody liked it. It tastes good. But the after effects.
The after effect kind of destroyed it.
Yes,
Oh,
we're not
God.
we're not pleasant.
Damn.
I will save you the gory details.
Yes, please do. Please do. All right. Well, that's our time. Thank you, Ema. I love you.
You asked me in the beginning, though, before we started about dating.
Yeah.
You asked me a question about what on a date would definitely be a red flag.
Yeah. What would be a red flag for a date?
I would say somebody yelling at you on the very first date.
That's
losing their temper and yelling at you.
That's obvious. I'm saying, what have you experienced? My question was, what have you experienced as a red flag on a date?
Exactly what I just said.
Oh, someone yelled at you when you were at work? When you were on a date?
On a date. We were on
someone
a date.
Yelling at you? Really?
I should have. What happened was I asked this gentleman. He had been in the Morristown Yeshiva and had left. So I was curious as to why he left Morristown Yeshiva. And usually when I was on other dates and I asked the same question to guys, they would say something like, "Well, I decided that it was time for me to look into a parnasa." That was the most common one. The other one I got was like some young men say started college, were interested in a profession, then became frum and went to Morristown to learn Torah. And then after a few years of learning Torah, felt that they really wanted to go back and finish their degrees and think in terms of marriage and then marriage and having a job. This guy yelled at me and said, "What kind of a question is that? It was time to leave."
Yeah, that's
quite honestly.
Did you stay to the end of the date?
Yeah, unfortunately I did. I decided,
oh God.
Oh well, I decided I was the type of person that I always gave somebody a second chance. Maybe I shouldn't have, but looking back in retrospect, if I had the head on me then that I have now, the wisdom, I would have said to him, "Well, sir, nice meeting you. Have a pleasant evening." And I should have just walked right out of the room. Yeah. And I have my advice to any girl is, if you're on a first date and some guy loses his temper with you on a first date and yells at you, pick up your cell phone, call an Uber, and tell him, "Nice meeting you, goodbye."
Yeah,
and take the Uber home. Yep. Don't these kind of guys, someone who's going to be so rude like that to yell at a girl on a first date doesn't deserve a second chance.
Yeah. Okay. And that's the end of our episode. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And we'll hear from you soon.
Okay. You have a good Shabbos, my sweetheart.
All right. Have a good Shabbos. I love you.
I love you.
Thank you for listening to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother episode. Please like and subscribe our Facebook group at Jewish Boy Calls His Mother podcast and check out our YouTube channel, Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I know you'd like it, and my mother would appreciate it too.